Hello, everyone. A very warm welcome to all of you. We're going to discuss the solutions of the three passages that you have just solved. Just let me know if I'm audible to all of you. Am I audible? Please let me know by a yes in the chat box if I am audible to all of you. Okay, great. Thank you so much, Carlos, for that. So let me get started. Now, what we are going to do today is I'm just going to give you a brief glimpse of the kind of reading that you need to do. I'm Sunita, and I'll be your host for the next 1 hour or so. And what are we going to do? We are going to read the passages in an involved manner. Slightly, I'll just show you a little bit of this to show you how you can most effectively solve the passages. All right. So this was the first passage that you encountered. You can see there are 3 paragraphs here. Now, how to read these passages in a certain amount of time and to get the maximum out of that reading so that when you are going to the questions, you're not taking too much of time. So I'm just going to show you how I form zones in my head as I read. Okay, just follow me. So let's say, for example, we are reading this first paragraph. All right, I'm just going to show you how. So from this line, till here, what I get to understand is, so there is this person called Du Bois who was studying different forces that helped to shape African American communities during a certain period. All right. Now, right now, I'm not thinking anything. Right now, I'm not noting down anything. I've just absorbed that we have a sociologist called Du Bois who explored various forces and how those forces shaped African American communities. And then we're talking from here to here, we're talking about how earlier studies, that means before Du Bois, economic opportunity was noted as one big factor. But from here to here, we are talking about how Du Bois found that there were other factors. All right, there are other factors such as religious institutions, educational efforts, and mutual aid networks, etc., that help to shape the African American communities. Okay, and then finally, Du Bois take that these elements were collectively influencing the formation and stability. So, my takeaway from this paragraph, now this is important because your takeaway will be very handy when you are answering questions such as the primary purpose, such as what is the function of the paragraph or lines, or what is the organization of the passage. So, this paragraph is mostly about factors other than economic opportunities, how they led to the formation and stability of Black urban communities. All right, this is in short. Okay, and then we read again the second paragraph. The second paragraph, the author begins by saying subsequent historical studies. Subsequent means subsequent to Du Bois. Okay, so Du Bois established that there were factors other than economic opportunities, and here, subsequent to that study, we have other studies examined roles played by churches, fraternal organizations, such as this. So, this is an example here, and emphasizing their broader significance beyond economic pursuits. So, we're basically continuing from factors other than economic, and we are kind of expanding on this, religious institutions. We're expanding, we're talking about churches, we're talking about fraternal organizations. So, this part is basically telling us how different agencies are working together, all right, together to create certain social impacts. And we continue in the line, churches extended their influence into different areas, fraternal groups mobilize resources to bring about progress. All right, and the last sentence always is very important. We are also saying these institutions conjunction with economic ventures. So three things: religious institutions, mutual aid networks, and economic ventures all put together to, so this is that zone. Anything related to this, we know where to go. And the last part, if you see, it talks about economic initiatives have been highlighted. The extent to which these efforts alone account for the development is not clear. It's open to interpretation. So only eco factors, extent of impact, not clear. That is what we take away from here. And then this line here, okay, it talks about the influence was varied across different regions. The last sentence is again very telling, which says that the relationship among the different factors and forces isn't a very simple relationship, and it continues to be examined. So that's the takeaway, that the relationship between the different factors that we've discussed in this paragraph, they're not simple. They continue to be studied. So this is how we should read any passage. I hope this is clear to all of you. Um, Prashant, I'm fine. Thank you for asking. Guys, so is this clear? When I did not go deeper into how to break down those sentences, today I focused mostly on how to create zones and understand ideas and connect them. But if you want more details about how to do this involved and evolved reading, I'm going to just quickly share the link to the free trial version of the course, and you can check that out. Here it is on the screen in front of you. Let me just quickly share that with you, and then I'm going to move on to the next. Okay, so there's a link on screen for you to visit the free trial version of the course to see more how we talk about involved and evolved reading and how that helps you to understand the passage with precision. Okay, enough about that. Let's go to the first question. So here it comes. This was the first question. Now, the best way to tackle RC questions is to understand, of course, the passage itself, but also to understand the question itself, right? What is the question saying? The author of the passage mentions fraternal organizations such as Prince Hall Masons primarily in order to. Now, this is what we at GMAT Wiz call a function question. It is asking you, what is the function of mentioning this here? Now, quick recollection or what I call pre-thinking. Why did the author mention this? The author mentioned Prince Hall Masons to mention or to bring into perspective the fraternal organizations, right? It was a fraternal organization. And the author wanted to discuss how the fraternal organizations played a role, in the formation or shaping the social landscape. Okay, so my pre-thinking is very simple. This Prince Hall Masons was mentioned to talk about the role in fostering resilience and identity, supporting individual and communal progress of the African Americans. Let's go through the options to understand which option clearly mentions this. Now, I noted down while you were answering the questions, a lot of you went for C, D, and B. Let's see what's the correct answer. I don't think anyone really marked the correct answer on this. So keep in mind, our pre-thinking is that this particular organization was mentioned to discuss the role such organizations played in building the social landscape. Highlight the economic role of Black-owned businesses. I can just chuck this off here itself. Prince Hall Masons were not businesses; they were fraternal organizations. Okay, so we can chuck that out there and then. So A is out. Support Du Bois' claim that economic opportunities were a significant factor. Again, this is not about economic opportunities. It was more about how fraternal organizations, how mutual aid along with economic ventures helped out. So B is out. Then demonstrate the influence of fraternal groups. Okay, in African American social services, educational, and politics. Now, if you recall, the part where we were talking about influences, it was churches, not fraternal organizations, that extended their influence into social service, education, and political advocacy. So, example of how economic ventures, again, they are not about economic ventures. Underscore, the word underscore means highlight the importance of. So, So underscore means highlight the significance of informal networks. So informal networks are the fraternal organizations, okay? The mutual aid networks here. So we can eliminate all of them and we're left with this word here, which can just fit anybody really marked E. Most of the answers that I have is C, D, and B. So I hope this is clear, everybody. Let's move to the next question. Okay, here it comes. Once again, we will quickly do some pre-thinking after reading the questions 10. Based on the passage, which of the following can be inferred? Okay, so an inference question about the relationship between Black entrepreneurs and communal institutions. Now, communal institutions would be institutions such as churches during the Great Migration. What do we have given? We now, if you remember the categorization of the second paragraph, we have it that Black churches, fraternal organizations, and we have uh, emerging economic ventures. These all of them work together to shape the social landscape, right? That is what we can remember, that the two work together for the development of the Black urban community. So we will look for an option which closely resembles this idea. Again, here, a lot of you got this correct. You marked C and B. Let's see which of that is correct. Black entrepreneurs often relied on churches. Did they rely? Inference question. Nowhere are they saying that the entrepreneurs were dependent on the churches for anything. So let's rule that out. The success of Black entrepreneurs was unaffected by the social and cultural contributions. This is exactly the opposite. I mean, we are given to understand that churches and economic ventures together, all right, these institutions operated in conjunction. So that's out. C says economic ventures could sometimes be intertwined. Intertwined means overlapping, conjunction. We have both the words overlapping, we have the word conjunction. With the activities of churches and fraternal organizations, we're going to keep C on hold. Fraternal organizations focus primarily on supporting individual entrepreneurs, not given anywhere. Communal institutions, that means churches, primarily operated to support Black entrepreneurs, also okay. Let's move to the third question. The primary purpose of the passage. Now, for the primary purpose, all three paragraphs are important, all right? But yes, the beginning and ending of the paragraph is always more important. Now, right at the beginning, the passage says that Du Bois wanted to explore varied forces that shaped the African American communities. And the last sentence tells us that the relationship among these forces was not simple. They resist simple categorization. So if we put the two together, right, that the author, the primary purpose of the passage is to explore the different forces, the different factors that shape the African American communities, and also to understand that these factors, the relationship between these factors is not so simple. We need to explore it more. So let's see which option brings out these two ideas best. Now, a lot of you marked B and D on this. Let's see what is the correct answer. Create a timeline. No, we can cut it off right here. No one's creating any timelines here. Evaluate. Now, evaluate means to find out what is correct and what is not correct, okay, to validate. All right, so I'm going to keep the word evaluate on hold. At GMAT Wiz, we discuss these kind of words in detail, so perhaps you could take a look at the free trial version. Evaluate the relative importance of economic and social factors. Okay, so varied forces, and in the first paragraph, we were talking about other than economic factors, what were the other factors which helped in the development of African American urban community. So we're going to keep this on hold. Challenge the emphasis. The author is not with anything anywhere. Highlight the role of religious and fraternal organizations. It was not just about religious and fraternal organizations. It was about religious, educational, fraternal, business organizations, all of them. So this is also out. Illustrate. Illustrate means provide with examples how African American migration patterns, they are not mentioned anywhere. So the correct answer is B. Okay. With that, let's move to the next passage. A quick reminder to those of you who are struggling with your prep, who have not been able to improve their scores despite a lot of efforts. You've done everything that you could, but you're stuck at a certain score. So I'm going to share with you a quick link using which you can set up a free call with our strategy experts. You can book a free call, talk to them about the problems that you're facing, and discuss the scores that you have plateaued at, and they will help you out. All right. So yes, let me move to the next passage. So this was the second passage. Now, two huge chunks of paragraphs, unlike the first passage where we had three different paragraphs, shorter paragraphs. So let's see how we are going to read this particular thing. Let me just remove the link. Okay, let's get started here. So this paragraph talks about emerging genre of management books or texts. Purports. Purports means professes, admits, says that it does so. Purports to catalog. Catalog means list the qualities and practices that distinguish financially successful businesses from those that fail. So very, very important sentence. All right. Um, Here, this particular management text, they claim, purport means claim, that they can list different qualities and practices that put failing businesses apart from the successful businesses. Okay, and this idea has been expanded in the subsequent sentences. To here, the same idea has been expanded, that success is primarily driven by certain characteristics. Examples of those characteristics have been given, and the authors of these texts have suggested that if businesses want to become financially successful, they should observe these successful companies which have followed these qualities and then imitate them. So this paragraph is all about the claim of the new genre of management books, which say that you can follow certain successful companies, copy their traits, and become like them. Does the author agree with that? Let's see. However, so right away we have the author's take here seems to be going in the opposite direction. All right, the author says that regardless of their financial success under historical conditions, it means under typical historical good conditions, maybe financial success was there. But these businesses, okay, all businesses may become vulnerable to failure as economic climate changes. So if you have historically perfect conditions, everything will be hunky and dory, but the moment economic climate changes, things can be different. So very important, this sentence, it's the author's take. The author saying even if historical success is there, economic climate changes can lead to the failure of all businesses. Okay, and then the author goes on to give you the example of one well-known text identified 11 great companies that were consistently successful. Over the following decade, only one of the 11 companies kind of remained successful. All right. And the other 10 companies actually underperformed. All right. So, the author, what is the author trying to say? Despite common factors identified in the culture of these great companies, remember in the first paragraph, we are talking about copying similar factors. The author is saying that um, the Great Recession, that means economic climate changing, may have come from, it can change all of this. And finally, the author tells us, in addition, far more businesses despite sharing common traits, okay, the traits that are supposed to make you successful, they have failed. That means copying common traits that make businesses successful is not enough. All right. And the author gives you the example of more than 100,000 new businesses to tell you that it's not enough to just copy successful businesses. You also have to understand the economic climate and how that can change things. So the author tells us the takeaway is despite common factors, external factors can ruin things. Therefore, you should be careful. You should not just rely on what these management texts tell you to do. With that, let's move to the questions. First question. The author of the passage would likely agree. So it's the author's opinion, and we know the author's opinion is there here throughout this paragraph, actually, and then again towards the end. So the author of the passage would likely agree that addition of which of the so that means first, and what does the author say is lacking in management texts? These management texts are saying they can list those practices and qualities that differentiate successful businesses from unsuccessful ones. However, the author is saying that it's not enough to look at those qualities. You also have to look at external factors, right? So point is, if these management texts can incorporate what is to be done if the economic climate changes, then that would perhaps make these management texts more relevant. It would improve these texts. So we are looking for a choice which will tell us that these management texts should include how to deal with economic climate changes. Okay, let's see. So a lot of you marked different answers, D, B, and A. Let's see what is the correct answer here. An analysis of the but about economic changes, changes in the economic climate in general. So it's not that these management texts should talk particularly about the Great Recession. The management text should talk about changes in the economic climate in general. Practical advice for business owners hoping to adopt. It's not just about a vague practical advice. All right, it is particularly about what to do in case of changes in the economic climate. Descriptions of the practices of companies that come highly successful. This is what the management text is already doing. So, this is not what the author is suggesting. Evidence suggesting that certain practices are shared by most businesses that successfully weather economic change. Okay, we can keep this on hold because this is talking about what businesses have done to tide over economic changes. A more rigorous definition of what makes a financially successful business, no. This is not what the author is advocating. So the correct answer is D. Let's move to the next question. Which of the following practices would the author of the passage most likely believe? Okay, once again, we are talking about author's belief. Would increase the odds of a company's future financial success. This is very similar to the previous question, and the pre-thinking is also along the similar lines. Okay, the author believes that if a business takes into account the impact of what economic climate changes can do, that way that company can overcome its financial hurdles and be successful in the long run. A lot of you marked E, A, and D. Let's see what's the correct answer. Replacing members of the management is not suggested. It is to do with understanding economic change. Setting highly ambitious financial goals, no. This is, in fact, what the management texts ask you to do, not the author. Imitating similar companies that have consistent financial success. This is again what the management texts are saying, are asking you to do. Avoiding patterns of hiring decisions. No. This is again, so all these are basically what the management texts are asking the businesses to follow. Taking preemptive means trying to prevent beforehand steps to minimize impact of possible negative economic changes. This echoes with what we pre-thought. So E is the correct answer. Let's look at the last question of this passage. Again, this is one of those function questions. In the last sentence of the passage, the author refers to 100,000 new businesses. Why? Okay, the author refers to the 100,000 businesses to point out that it's not just enough to study the qualities and practices of successful businesses. You should also look at external factors such as the economic climate. Okay, so for that, the author points out that more than 100,000 businesses start each year alone, but a lot of them fail. All right, so let's see what's the correct answer here. Um, Here also, now here, I think none of you really got it correct. All of you, almost all of you marked E as the correct answer. Let's see what's the correct answer here, which matches our pre-thinking. So the author mentions this 100,000 businesses to criticize the authors of certain management texts. Okay, this part is fine. For studying inadequate number of companies. No, this is not why the author has brought up the number of 100,000. Okay, definitely the author is criticizing the authors of management texts, but not for studying fewer companies. Demonstrate means show that the authors of certain management texts have drawn faulty conclusions. Yes, I think we'll keep this. The author definitely wants to point out in the entire passage that the authors of these new genre of management texts are not right. Suggests that the authors of certain management texts have incorrectly identified the qualities that are shared. No, the author doesn't say that they have not correctly identified the qualities. The author is saying those qualities are not enough. So this is out. Emphasize the importance of studying companies that can be considered long-term survivors. No, the author doesn't want to point out who survived in long term, because these 100,000 businesses are not businesses that survived all of them. Okay, because the author is saying a relatively small number of long-term survivors are there. Illustrate a potential negative consequence of the practice of imitating. No, that is also not why. I mean, the author is not giving this example to point out the negative outcomes of copying the qualities of successful companies. See, the author doesn't say anywhere that don't copy the qualities. The author is saying that is not enough to be successful. So we are going to be going with B. Let's move to the third passage. So we've done a social science passage, we've done the passage on business, and let's see what this passage is about. Okay, this seems to be about science and research. All right. Researchers investigating the link between daily coffee consumption and learning. So this is what they are studying. Okay, we'll call coffee consumption CC, we'll call learning L. And these researchers are drawing the conclusion that subjects who consumed 1 cup of coffee a day for 1 week exhibited improvements in declarative memory. Furthermore, so down the line, they're adding to that the improvements were longer lasting, and subjects who consumed 1 cup of coffee were able to recall facts more with more accuracy. So, in all, this paragraph is about daily coffee consumption and the link with learning. And the claim of these researchers is 1 cup per day per week for the entire week is going to lead to improved declarative memory, more accurate recall. This is in short. Okay, let's go to the second para. And we are starting with while. So, once again, this para was all about the researchers. This para, it seems, will be more about the author. So, at GMAT Wiz, we also teach you how to make note of author's opinion and third party opinions, because a lot of questions come up based on, and you have just seen that in the previous passage about what the author agrees with or doesn't agree with. While daily coffee consumption may aid in the process of short-term memories and increase the likelihood that these memories are stored. The study, now this is important, this is the author's view. The study glosses over means ignores an important fact. What is that important fact that the study ignores? It ignores that many of the subjects exhibit sensitivities to caffeine. That means they can have problems if they drink caffeine, which is there in coffee, and that those sensitivities can actually lead to a decrease in the link between caffeine and learning. Okay. So this is what the author is saying here, that the claim is ignoring an important fact. If there are sensitivities to C, and some examples of those sensitivities are given, then that link can actually be a very weak link. That means coffee may not have any impact on learning. Nonetheless, now this is also very important. Transition words are very important. Any number of reaction, nonetheless, so let me just clear this up so that you can see what I'm reading. Studies have ignored something important. The study represents a sampling, despite the fact that the study has not does not contain, let's put it this way, more comprehensive samples. They are random samplings, and thus you can have any number of subjects showing any number of reactions to caffeine. So basically the author is telling us that the sampling wasn't perfectly done, and therefore this claim could be a weak claim. Okay. If enough subjects continue to display signs of improvement in learning, then this result would not be inconsistent. Not inconsistent means would be consistent, right? Double negative here. So the author is saying that if you take in more subjects to show the improved learning, then we can stick with this claim that yes, 1 cup a day of coffee can improve memory, can improve declarative memory. Okay, so the author believes that sensitivities and random sampling can go against this claim, but if you have enough sampling and if sensitivities are not there, then the study can stay as it is. Still, so despite all these yeses and nos that the author is discussing in the second para, until the researchers either release more details, so until we have more data or more studies are conducted, the extent to which caffeine sensitivity influence the link between coffee consumption and memory, that will not be known. So the takeaway is we need more data to fully understand the link. So this is the passage, that there is a claim that is being made. The author believes there are certain factors that make this claim weak, and then the author says we need more data, more studies to make this claim stronger. Let's go to the question. First question. Based on information in the passage, if a follow-up study had been conducted in which those with caffeine sensitivities were removed, that means we had a sample where no sensitivities were there, such a study would do what? Now remember, we had already pre-thought that sensitivities to caffeine leads to decrease in the link between caffeine and learning. So if sensitivities were removed, the link between caffeine and memory or learning will be stronger. So we are looking for an answer which contains this. A lot of you, now there was a lot of different options that you marked. Some of you marked D, some of you marked B, some of you marked A, some of you have also marked E. All right, so let's see what's the correct answer. We are looking for link will be stronger. So such a study would most likely be so inconclusive. This is the opposite. The study would actually be conclusive. So we can rule out A. All right. Uncover a connection between improvements. It would not uncover a connection, it would make a connection stronger. So B is also out. Provide scientists little insight. Little insight means no insight into the extent. This is the opposite. It would provide the scientists with more insight. Show a more pronounced relationship. More pronounced relationship means stronger relationship between caffeine consumption and improvement. Absolutely, we can actually mark this. The link will be stronger. Need to determine if those without caffeine sensitivities have similar increase. No, we are not going to take into account the ones with sensitivities. So this is out. Okay. See, I think a lot of you were not able to I think decode what the question stem was asking. So make sure that you are very clear with what the question is asking so that you don't land up marking the wrong answer. Okay, second question. A lot of you marked this with E, C, and D. Let's see what's the correct answer. In describing the range of negative reactions of subjects with caffeine sensitivities, so we are referring to this whole thing here. Range of reactions, all these. If we pre-think a little bit, the author is mentioning these sensitivities here to discuss that there are negative reactions, all right, and the negative reactions are the sensitivities to C, and these sensitivities have been cited to weaken the link between coffee consumption and learning. So we are looking for an option that will say that these range of reactions are cited to weaken the link between coffee consumption and learning. Okay, let's see which option says this. You had marked E, C, and D here. Okay. So the author implies that such subjects do not experience more than one related side effect. This is the opposite. Remember, the author says any number of subjects can exhibit any number of reactions. So that makes A incorrect. Nobody marked A. The author implies that those who suffer migraines do not experience insomnia. This is the same as A. So this will be out. None of these subjects, that means none of the ones who have the sensitivities after consuming caffeine will show improvement. No, the author doesn't say that none of them will show improvement. The author just says that that will weaken the link. So this is out because we are saying none. The negative effects some subjects experience after drinking caffeine are transient. No transiency, unlikely to affect. In fact, this is likely to affect their memory. So we're left with E actually, which is the answer. The presence of any such reactions, that means the sensitivities, can negate, that means weaken, the observed link between. This is what we pre-thought, and that's the correct answer. That brings us to the last question. Let's read uh, you marked E and D as the options. Let's see which one is correct. According to the passage, okay, the observed results of the study are not inconsistent with. Now, not inconsistent literally means they are consistent with. Okay, this is the understanding. Why the result of the study is consistent with the fact that any number of subjects could exhibit caffeine sensitivities. Why? So, if we think enough that they are consistent with the claim, if enough subjects show improved learning, then the claim is fine, right? We have to identify why the claim is fine. So the claim will be fine if enough subjects are studied and they show improved learning, then the claim is fine. So we are looking for an option that will point out that enough subjects were studied and they did show that there was improvement after consuming coffee. The findings from the study tend to be tentative. No, the author is going to, we have to point out that results of the study are consistent with everything that the author is saying. So findings tend to be tentative and is not the idea. Even subjects who experience migraines after drinking, again, this is not about migraines after drinking particularly. Any such subjects would have no longer participated in the study. No, we want more subjects to participate in the study and exhibit improved memory functions. The same effect in improvement in declarative memory would be observed. Same effect. Regardless of the number of subjects who displayed, no. We are going to take into account more subjects. It's given here. See? If enough subjects continue to display signs of improvement, then this result would not be inconsistent. So E is the correct answer, which says as long as majority of subjects display improved memory functions, such improvements will agree with the claim and negate the adverse effects of the caffeine sensitivities. So I hope guys that was helpful. That brings us to the end of this solution discussion. I'll once again share the link to set up a free call with our strategy experts. Let me just quickly share that with you as well. If you are facing issues with your reading and comprehension, or even with your CR, and you don't know what to do, you've tried everything, you've tried all sorts of techniques and approaches, and things aren't not working, perhaps it's time to take expert advice. So, all the very best, guys, for your prep. And I hope this was really helpful and informative. If there are any questions that you would like to ask, I'm there for the next 1 minute. Yes? Do you have any queries? Remember, it's very important to break down long sentences and read them. Make sure that you follow where the author is saying something and where somebody else is saying something. Be very particular about different entities present in the paragraph. Those things will help you eliminate options faster. All right, more time should be spent on reading the passage than on going through the questions. I noticed when you were solving the passage that you did not take more than 3 to 4 minutes to read the passage. In fact, just 3 minutes, but you took nearly 2 minutes to answer the question. So it should not be like that. You should take a good amount of 4 to 5 minutes to read the passage, depending on the passage length and difficulty level, but take, let's say, about under a minute to solve each question. So thank you, guys, and happy learning. Bye bye.